Hey YouTubers, how are you? Hope you're all doing very well. Now, as you're aware, I've been rather sick lately, but fortunately tonight I'm feeling a little bit better. So fingers crossed, before too long I'll be tip-top. So I'm feeling okay to do a review, so hopefully you're waiting with anticipation for this one. For all of you guys out there who don't like horror, this one will appeal to you. This is an adventure/action film. But for horror fans, you'll be pleased to know that this director is actually a horror director. So he's really trying something different, and he has elements of horror in the film. So hopefully that should still appeal to you guys. So it's a bit, there's something in this film for everyone. So it was made in 2010. It's a film from the UK. Now, while I say it's UK, it's spoken in English, but there is some that's spoken in Gaelic, which is a language in Britain. So some of it's subtitled, but 95% of it is spoken in the English language. So you don't have to worry about too much subtitled reading. As I said, 2010, so a very recent film, directed by Neil Marshall. So for horror fans, you'll know in the UK, you'll know who he is. And this movie is called Centurion. And the story is as follows. From director Neil Marshall, who brought you The Descent and Dog Soldiers, comes a brutal and gripping story of courage, passion, and survival on the frontier of the Roman Empire. After years of relentless conquest, the Empire of Rome covers much of Europe. But in northern Britain, their invasion has ground to a halt in the face of the guerrilla tactics of an elusive enemy, the savage and terrifying tribe known as the Picts. Quintus is the sole survivor of a Pictish raid on a Roman frontier fort. Inspired by his allegiance to Rome, he marches north with General Virulus and his legendary Ninth Legion, under orders to wipe out the Picts, starting with the fierce leader Gorlacon. But when the legion is ambushed on unfamiliar ground and Virulus taken captive, Quintus faces a desperate struggle to keep his small platoon alive behind enemy lines. This band of soldiers must evade the remorseless Pict pursuers, led by the fierce warrior Etain, as they race to rescue their general and reach the safety of the Roman frontier. Combining spectacular battle sequences with stunning landscapes and a story steeped in legend, Centurion is an action film of epic scale. So in short, it's the era of the Roman Empire, and they've pretty much taken over most of Europe, but they've ground to a halt in northern Britain. Now, they are in a fierce battle with a tribe known as the Picts. And this tribe, they're very stubborn, and they're very brutal and remorseless. So they're very ruthless, and they'll stop at nothing to defend their land. So Quintus is the main character, played by Michael Fassbender. He is assigned to join their general Virulus in a mission to completely wipe out the Pict, the Pict sort of tribe. So they're sent into behind enemy lines to wipe out this hostile tribe, but things don't go to plan. The Romans are ambushed and most of them are massacred, and the general is taken captive. And Quintus is left alive. He has been hiding under a pile of dead bodies, so the Picts have gone off, assuming that he's dead. Then there are a handful of other survivors who have survived that onslaught, and now Quintus is taking responsibility for each and every surviving member, and he sees it as his responsibility to look over his men and to get them to safety. But once more, he also sees it as his responsibility to rescue their general. So he has to go into enemy territory, behind enemy lines, deep behind enemy lines, go into the Pictish camp, rescue the general, but things don't go quite to plan, and there is an event that unfolds which really makes the Picts angry. So then the surviving members, led by Quintus, they have to escape this camp, and they're pretty much on the run. And throughout the entire film, the Picts are pursuing them, and Quintus and his small platoon have to get to the Roman frontier before the pursuers catch them. So it's pretty much a cat and mouse game from the 20-minute mark. So a very thrilling sort of action/adventure. It's as far as I'm going to go with the story. If you want to know more, I would highly recommend you go out there and pick this one up yourself. It's widely known, so you won't have any trouble in tracking it down. Now, my thoughts on the movie. This is actually quite a thrilling film. Well, most of it is anyway. And I didn't know what to expect coming from a guy who made his name from horror, coming into an action slash adventure, but you can really get sort of horror elements in there. It is a very brutal film. There is a lot of blood and guts, so gorehounds are going to be very pleased. And it does, some parts are reminiscent of Dog Soldiers and The Descent. It's just the type of vibe that it has. The cinematography is second to none. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. The hillside of northern Britain, very cold and dark sort of mood to the film. It's in sort of grey picture, so it's not a colourful film, and it really does put you in the shoes of the people being chased, the Romans. So I thought the mood to it was nailed, and uh, Neil Marshall really does nail the atmosphere to his films. And although, as I said, this is not a horror film, it still gives you the impression that it is, something of a darker sort of story. So, yeah, I mean, as I said, a thrilling film. Once the Romans are on the run, you kind of getting a little bit freaked out as to where exactly the Picts are. The Picts are led by this woman, played by Olga Kurylenko, who I don't think was cast very well, but she's very beautiful, and at the same time she had a very menacing sort of presence. So she was a tracker. And although the Romans were quite far away, you knew that it was only a matter of time before the Picts ended up chasing them down. So you had some sort of thrilling aspect to the film in the pursuers. Although it was a long chase, you kind of got into the feel of it, and you were worried that if you were if you were put into the Roman shoes, that you could kind of feel the adrenaline that they were feeling. So I really like the idea to it, but unfortunately I don't think that idea in the end came off. Now, there were aspects and there were certain parts of the film that were really thrilling, but then there were other parts that were just totally out of place. Now, the acting was decent, but it really didn't have a lot to work with. Michael Fassbender, there was also Dominic West off The Wire, and a few more familiar UK faces. So for those of you living in the UK, you will know the faces in this film. I thought the dialogue was a little bit modernised. It's kind of hard to explain, but when they were talking, it really didn't feel like they were from that era. I'm sure you guys know sort of what I'm talking about, although it's hard to explain. And just the way they were acting, I kind of felt that it didn't provide a very realistic sort of portrayal of that time. So that really took a lot out of it for me as well. I also didn't like the fact that you didn't have much sympathy for either the Romans or the Picts. There wasn't too much character development. You kind of got things on face value. There wasn't too much depth. So I think that if you could really feel sympathetic towards either side, at least, it would have provided some more fear. But unfortunately, a lot of the time and effort went into the gore. Now, I feel that if they kind of laid off the gore a little bit and laid off the battle scenes and focused more on the suspenseful chase, I thought it would have been a better film. Now, as I said, gorehounds will get a lot out of this, but unfortunately, some really good gore scenes, but there's some CGI blood, and that really took it out for me as well. The ending was very Hollywood, and I hated it. I thought, it really should have ended better. There was a love interest between the main character and another woman. I just thought that was well out of place, and once again, that went down a Hollywood route. And all in all, it had a very thrilling idea, but it just didn't come across as a very well executed film. Very unfortunate, because I consider Dog Soldiers and The Descent as brilliant films, but unfortunately he's let himself down a little bit in this one. It could have been really good if he focused more on the suspense rather than the gore. Having said that, I said CGI gore, but there are some pretty memorable gore scenes in there that look real. So, some pretty good battle scenes, but it really should have been a suspenseful film rather than a gore film. So definitely not one of Neil Marshall's best films. I would still say go out there and give it a look if you're into, your medieval or Roman Empire era films. It's a pretty good chase film. There are some scenes that are genuinely thrilling, but the thrilling aspect isn't maintained. There is no sustained suspense levels in this film, which is a great disappointment, but yeah. I mean, it's definitely not a film that I'm going to recommend. Alright guys, that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you later. Bye.